I stood at the back of the auditorium, clutching my graduation program so tight the paper cut into my palm. My cap sat crooked on my head because I'd pinned it myself that morning, alone in my tiny apartment, while my phone stayed silent. Don't you dare embarrass us by making a scene when they call your name. Those were my mother's exact words 3 days ago. Not congratulations. Not we're proud of you, just a warning delivered over the phone like I was a liability she needed to manage. I watched families flood the rows of seats. Fathers with cameras, mothers with flowers, siblings holding balloons that said, "Congrats, grad," in shiny letters. My row, the one I'd reserved with their names written carefully on the tickets, sat completely empty. They didn't come. My older brother Derek had texted me at 6 a.m. Mom and Dad decided it's better if we skip it. You understand. It's just a state school ceremony anyway. We'll celebrate later. Later never came. It never does with them. I'd worked 3 jobs to get here. Waitressing until 2 a.m., tutoring kids online at dawn, and doing data entry on weekends. Every single dollar I scraped together went to tuition, books, and the $7,000 in student loans that kept me awake most nights. My parents could have helped. They had the money. I'd seen the receipts from Derek's private university, the one they paid for in full. I'd seen the photos of his graduation 4 years ago, where they threw him a party with a caterer and a 3-tier cake. But I was different. I was the daughter who chose the hard way by picking a major they didn't approve of. I was studying social work, not business. I wanted to help people, not make them richer. And for that, I was punished with silence and distance. "Jessica Martinez," the announcer called. My heart hammered against my ribs. I walked across that stage with my head high, even though my chest felt hollow. The applause was polite, scattered, generic. No one screamed my name. No one stood up. I shook the dean's hand, took my diploma, and walked off into the wings where graduates were supposed to take photos with their families. I stood there alone, holding my diploma like it was a shield. A woman in her 60s approached me. She had kind eyes and a camera around her neck. "Sweetheart, where's your family?" I forced a smile. "They couldn't make it." She frowned, and I saw pity flash across her face. I hated that look. I didn't need anyone's pity. I needed them to see me, to value me, to show up. "Well," she said softly, "let me take your picture. Every graduate deserves at least 1 photo today." I let her. She took 3. In every single one, my smile didn't reach my eyes. After the ceremony, I walked to my car, a beat-up Honda that coughed every time I started it. I sat in the driver's seat and stared at my phone. No calls. No texts. Nothing. Then I saw it. A group chat with my parents and Derek. My mother had sent a photo of them at a fancy brunch spot downtown. The caption read, "Celebrating Derek's new promotion. So proud of our successful son." Today. They were celebrating him today. On my graduation day, my hands shook as I typed, "I graduated today. Thought you'd want to know." The 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No one responded. I threw my phone into the passenger seat and pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. That's when I let myself cry. Not because I was weak, but because I'd spent 4 years believing that maybe, just maybe, they'd see me differently when I proved I could do it on my own. But they didn't. That night I got an email. The subject line read, "Urgent, University Scholarship Committee." I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam. But something made me click. "Dear Ms. Martinez, you have been selected as one of 3 finalists for the Hartman Memorial Excellence Award. The winner will be announced at the College of Social Sciences ceremony next week. This award includes a $50,000 grant for outstanding academic and community achievement. $50,000. I read it 5 times. My student debt was $7,000. This could change everything. This could prove to them that I wasn't a failure, that my choice mattered. But first I had to win, and I had to do it without them knowing. Because if they found out now, they'd show up. They'd smile for the cameras and pretend they supported me all along. They'd take credit for raising a winner. I wouldn't let them have that. Not this time. The Hartman Memorial Excellence Award ceremony was scheduled for the following Friday at 7 p.m. in the main campus hall. I had exactly 6 days to prepare a 5-minute speech about my academic journey and community impact. 6 days to pretend my family's absence didn't hollow me out from the inside. I didn't tell anyone about the nomination. Not my roommate. Not my coworkers. And definitely not my family. The email said only 3 finalists had been chosen from over 200 applicants. The odds were slim, but they were there, real, tangible. I spent every free moment writing and rewriting my speech. I talked about the youth shelter where I volunteered every Tuesday, helping teenage girls aging out of foster care navigate college applications. I wrote about the single mothers I tutored for free, women who were trying to get their GEDs while working full-time. I described the community garden project I'd started in a food desert neighborhood, where families could grow their own vegetables. But every time I practiced out loud, my voice cracked when I reached the part about why this work mattered to me, because I knew what it felt like to be invisible. To fight alone. To wonder if anyone would notice if you just disappeared. On Tuesday, 3 days before the ceremony, my phone rang. My mother's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it for 4 rings before answering. "Jessica, we need to talk about your attitude," she said. "No hello, no how are you." My attitude? That message you sent in the group chat was incredibly passive-aggressive. You know, we've been busy. Derek's promotion is a big deal for the family business. I closed my eyes and counted to 5. It was my graduation, Mom. And we explained that we'd celebrate later. You're being dramatic. This is exactly why we worry about you. You're so sensitive about everything. Sensitive. That word again. The one they used every time I asked for the bare minimum of acknowledgement. I worked 3 jobs for 4 years, I said quietly. I graduated with honors. I have $7,000 in debt because you refused to help me. And you couldn't sit in a chair for 2 hours. We didn't refuse. We made a financial decision. Derek's education was an investment in the family's future. Your degree in social work? Jessica, be realistic. What kind of return are we supposed to see on that? Return on investment. That's what I was to her. A bad stock pick. I have to go, I whispered. Wait, your brother's engagement party is this Saturday at 6 p.m. Your father already paid for your plate. You need to be there. And please, wear something appropriate this time. No thrift store disasters. Saturday. The day after the award ceremony. I'll try, I lied. Trying isn't good enough, Jessica. Family shows up for family. You could learn something from that. She hung up before I could respond. I sat on my apartment floor, my speech notes scattered around me like fallen leaves. Family shows up for family. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. That night, I received an email from the scholarship committee. They wanted to confirm my attendance and asked if I'd be bringing any guests to the ceremony. There were 2 reserved seats available for finalists' families. I stared at the empty fields on the form. Guest name 1, guest name 2. My cursor hovered over the boxes. I could invite them. I could give them one more chance to show up. To see that my worthless degree had value. That I had value. But I remembered my graduation day. The empty row. The brunch photo. The way my mother's voice dripped with disappointment every time she said my name. I typed, "No guests. I'll attend alone." The next morning at the youth shelter, I was helping a 17-year-old named Alicia fill out college financial aid forms when she looked up at me with tired eyes. "Miss Jessica, do you ever feel like no matter what you do, it's never enough for some people?" I thought about my mother's words. The empty seats. The $7,000 that might as well have been $7 million for how much it meant to them. "Every single day," I said honestly. "So what do you do? How do you keep going?" I picked up her completed FAFSA form, the one that could change her entire future. "You prove them wrong. Not for them, for you. You build a life so full of purpose that their opinion becomes background noise." She smiled for the first time in weeks. "You think I can actually get into college?" "I know you can." What I didn't tell her was that I was still trying to convince myself of the same thing. That my worth wasn't determined by my family's validation. That success didn't require their applause. On Thursday night, 24 hours before the ceremony, I practiced my speech one final time in front of my bathroom mirror. My hands shook. My voice wavered. But I got through it. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek. Mom's really upset you haven't confirmed for my party. Don't ruin this for me. Not, congratulations on graduating. Not, how are you doing? Just another reminder that I was expected to show up for them while they couldn't bother to show up for me. I turned off my phone. Tomorrow I would walk into that ceremony hall alone. I would give my speech to a room full of strangers. And win or lose, I would prove that I didn't need them to validate my worth. But deep down, in the part of me I tried to ignore, I still wished they cared enough to try. Friday arrived like a storm I'd been watching build on the horizon. I woke up at 5 a.m., too anxious to sleep, and spent 2 hours getting ready for a ceremony that would determine whether I could finally breathe without the weight of debt crushing my chest. I chose a simple navy blue dress from the thrift store my mother hated so much. It fit perfectly, hugged my waist in all the right places, and cost me $12. I did my own makeup, curled my own hair, and stood in front of the mirror giving myself a pep talk that felt more like a prayer. You deserve this. You worked for this. You don't need them. But my reflection looked unconvinced. At 6 p.m., I arrived at the campus hall. The parking lot was already filling up with families. I watched a father adjust his daughter's collar, beaming with pride. I saw a mother crying happy tears while her son laughed and hugged her. Everywhere I looked, people had someone. I had my car keys and a speech folded in my purse. Inside, the hall was decorated with banners and flowers. A stage stood at the front with 3 podiums, one for each finalist. My name was printed on a placard. Jessica Martinez, Community Impact and Academic Excellence. I found my designated seat in the front row. To my right sat Marcus Chen, a pre-med student I recognized from campus. To my left was an empty chair with a placard that read Vanessa Torres. Marcus turned to me with a warm smile. Nervous. Terrified, I admitted. Me too. My parents flew in from California. They're sitting 5th row taking photos of literally everything. He laughed, then noticed the empty seats behind me. Your family coming late? They're not coming, I said simply. His smile faltered. Oh, I'm sorry. It's fine, I interrupted, even though we both knew it wasn't. Before he could respond, a woman rushed down the aisle and slid into the seat next to me. She was young, maybe 30, with short black hair and an expensive-looking pantsuit. She was breathing hard like she'd been running. Vanessa Torres? I asked. That's me. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was insane. She dropped her bag and immediately pulled out her phone, typing furiously. The lights dimmed. Dean Richardson took the stage, his voice booming through the microphone. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we celebrate 3 exceptional students who embody the values of our institution: excellence, service, and integrity. The audience applauded. I could see Marcus's parents in the 5th row, holding up their phones to record. I could see dozens of proud families all here to witness their children succeed. My section was empty except for the other finalists. Dean Richardson continued. Each finalist will present a 5-minute speech about their journey and impact. Our distinguished panel of judges will then deliberate and announce the winner, who will receive the $50,000 Hartman Memorial Excellence Award. $50,000. I could almost taste the freedom. Our first speaker is Marcus Chen. Marcus walked to the podium with confidence. He spoke about his research on pediatric cancer treatments, his volunteer work at children's hospitals, his dream of becoming an oncologist who makes care accessible to underserved communities. His parents were crying by the 3rd minute. The audience gave him a standing ovation. He was incredible. My chances suddenly felt microscopic. Our second speaker is Vanessa Torres. Vanessa stood, smoothed her suit, and approached the microphone like she owned it. Her speech was polished, rehearsed, perfect. She talked about her nonprofit that provided technology education to low-income students. She had graphs. She had statistics. She had a video presentation that played on screens behind her. I've secured partnerships with 3 major tech companies and received a preliminary offer of $200,000 in additional funding, pending tonight's outcome, she said smoothly. The audience murmured, impressed. I felt my stomach drop. She wasn't just accomplished. She was a machine, and machines don't lose. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. She walked back to her seat with a satisfied smile, and I swear I heard her whisper to someone on her phone, "It's in the bag." Then Dean Richardson called my name. Jessica Martinez. I stood on legs that felt like water. The walk to the podium stretched for miles. I could feel every eye in the room on me, judging, measuring, comparing me to the two brilliant candidates who'd just set the bar impossibly high. I unfolded my speech with shaking hands. The paper crinkled too loud in the microphone. Then, just as I opened my mouth to speak, I heard it. The door at the back of the hall creaked open. I looked up, and my heart stopped. My mother, father, and Derek walked in. Late, loud, disruptive. My mother was wearing sunglasses indoors and carrying a designer purse that cost more than my entire education. My father was on his phone. Derek was chewing gum with his mouth open. They didn't apologize for the interruption. They just found seats in the very back row and settled in like they were doing me a favor by showing up at all. My mother pulled off her sunglasses and waved at me with a tight smile. It wasn't warm. It wasn't supportive. It was a warning. "Don't embarrass us." That's what that smile said. That's what it always said. I looked back down at my speech. The words blurred. My hands trembled so badly the microphone picked up the sound of paper shaking. The room was silent, waiting. Marcus gave me an encouraging nod. Vanessa checked her phone, already bored. And my family sat in the back, watching me like I was an obligation they'd finally gotten around to fulfilling. I took a breath. Then I made a decision that would change everything. I put my speech down and decided to speak from my heart instead. No script. No safety net. Just the truth. "My name is Jessica Martinez," I began, my voice stronger than I expected. "And I need to tell you about what it means to fight alone." The words came out raw, unfiltered, nothing like the polished speech I'd memorized. I worked 3 jobs to pay for my education. I slept 4 hours a night for 4 years. I ate ramen so many days in a row that I forgot what real food tasted like. I could see people in the audience leaning forward. Marcus's mother had her hand over her heart. "I graduated last week with honors. I have a 3.9 GPA. I've volunteered over 800 hours at a youth shelter. I started a community garden that feeds 47 families. I tutored 12 single mothers for free, and 10 of them passed their GED exams." My voice cracked, but I pushed through. "And the people who were supposed to be proudest of me? They didn't come to my graduation. They told me not to embarrass them. They said my degree was worthless. They made me feel like loving people instead of money made me a failure." I finally looked at the back row. My mother's face had gone pale. My father had put his phone down. Derek had stopped chewing his gum. "But I'm not a failure," I continued, my voice rising. "I'm proof that you don't need permission to matter, that you don't need validation to have value, and that sometimes the people who should love you the most are the ones who understand you the least." The silence in the room was deafening. I came here tonight alone because I've done everything alone. And if I win this award, it won't be because someone paved the way for me. It'll be because I bulldozed my own path through concrete with my bare hands. I picked up my prepared speech and held it up to the audience. This paper has all my accomplishments listed. All the impressive numbers and statistics that make me look good on an application. But the real story? The real story is that I'm still here. Still fighting. Still believing that helping people is worth more than a corner office and a 6-figure salary. I set the paper down and looked directly at the judges. "So no, I don't have a fancy presentation. I don't have corporate partnerships or funding offers. What I have is $7,000 in student loan debt, a beat-up Honda that barely starts, and a heart that refuses to quit even when everyone tells me I should." The audience erupted in applause before I even finished. People stood up. I saw tears on faces I didn't recognize. Marcus was clapping so hard his hands had to hurt. But in the back row, my family sat frozen. My mother's expression had shifted from pale shock to something darker. Anger, humiliation. I walked back to my seat on shaking legs. My entire body was vibrating with adrenaline and terror. I'd just exposed my family's neglect in front of hundreds of people. I'd just told the truth they'd spent years trying to hide behind expensive brunches and fake smiles. Vanessa leaned over and whispered, "That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever seen." "Probably both," I whispered back. Dean Richardson returned to the podium, visibly moved. "Thank you to all three of our exceptional finalists. The judges will now deliberate. We'll announce the winner shortly. Please enjoy refreshments in the lobby during the intermission." The lights came up. People flooded toward the lobby. I stayed in my seat, too afraid to move, too afraid to face what was coming, because I knew they were coming for me. I heard the footsteps before I saw them, sharp heels clicking against the floor like a countdown to execution. My mother appeared in front of me, her face twisted with rage, barely contained beneath a fake smile. My father stood behind her, arms crossed. Derek looked embarrassed, like I was a stain he couldn't scrub out. Outside. "Now," my mother hissed through clenched teeth. "I need to stay for the—" "Now, Jessica." I followed them into the hallway, my heart hammering. Several other families milled around, eating cookies and drinking punch. My mother pulled me into a corner, away from the crowd but not far enough that we had complete privacy. "What the hell was that?" she snarled, dropping all pretense of composure. "That was my speech. That was a public humiliation. You just told an entire auditorium that your family doesn't support you. Do you have any idea how that makes us look? How it makes you look?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Mom, you didn't come to my graduation. You told me not to embarrass you. You've made it clear for 4 years that you think my life choices are worthless." "We came tonight, didn't we?" Derek interjected. "We're here. And this is how you repay us? By throwing us under the bus in front of all these people? You came an hour late and walked in during my speech." "We came," my mother shouted, loud enough that several people turned to stare. She lowered her voice, but the venom remained. "You are so ungrateful. Do you know how many sacrifices we've made as a family? How hard your father works? How much we've invested in this family's future?" "You've invested in Derek's future," I said quietly. "You paid for his private university in full. You threw him a graduation party with a caterer. You're celebrating his promotion on my graduation day. But I'm ungrateful?" My father finally spoke, his voice cold. "Derek's career benefits the whole family. He's taking over the business. He's building something. You're working at a shelter making minimum wage with a degree that'll never pay for itself. That's not investment, Jessica. That's charity." The word hit me like a slap. Charity. That's what I was to them. A charity case. A daughter they tolerated out of obligation, not love. "I don't need your money," I said, my voice shaking. "I never did. I just needed you to show up. Just once. Just to see me." My mother laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, sweetheart. This is exactly why we worry about you. You're so emotional. So desperate for attention. It's exhausting." "Then stop pretending you care," I shot back. "Stop showing up when it's convenient for you and disappearing when I actually need you." "How dare you speak to your mother that way?" my father said. "How dare you treat me like I'm worthless for choosing to help people instead of making money?" A small crowd had formed. People were definitely watching now, pretending not to listen while catching every word. My mother noticed. Her eyes went ice cold. "You want to know the truth, Jessica? Fine. We didn't come to your graduation because we were embarrassed. Embarrassed that our daughter chose a nothing degree from a nothing school. Embarrassed that you're 24 years old and still struggling. Derek had his life together by 22. Every word was a knife, and she knew exactly where to twist it. You think this little speech tonight makes you brave? It makes you look desperate, pathetic, like you're begging for sympathy points because you can't succeed on your actual merit." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Not here, not in front of her. If you win this award," she continued, "it'll be because you guilt-tripped the judges with your sob story, not because you earned it." Before I could respond, someone cleared their throat behind us. We all turned. A man in his 70s stood there wearing an expensive suit and a stern expression. He had silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through my mother's performance. "Excuse me," he said calmly. I couldn't help but overhear. And I think you should know something. My mother's fake smile snapped back into place. I'm sorry, this is a private family matter. I'm sure it is, the man replied. But I'm Judge Harold Hartman. And this award? It's named after my daughter, who died believing that helping others was the highest calling a person could have. The hallway went completely silent. And if your daughter wins tonight, he continued, looking directly at my mother, it won't be out of pity. It'll be because she's exactly the kind of person my daughter was. Brave, selfless, and utterly wasted on people who can't see her value. He turned and walked back into the auditorium, leaving my mother standing there with her mouth open. The silence that followed Judge Hartman's words was suffocating. My mother's face had turned a deep shade of red, her carefully constructed mask of superiority shattered in front of a growing audience of strangers. Let's go, my father said tersely, grabbing my mother's arm. We're not done here, my mother hissed at me. Yes, you are, I said quietly. You're done. You came here to control the narrative to make sure I didn't embarrass you. But you embarrassed yourselves. Derek stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. You just cost Dad a potential business deal. Judge Hartman sits on the board of 3 companies we're trying to partner with. Of course, that's what this was really about. Not my feelings, not my accomplishments. Their reputation, their business, their image. That's not my problem, I said. Everything you do is our problem, my mother snapped. You're part of this family whether you like it or not. Then start treating me like it. My father checked his watch. We're leaving. Your brother's engagement party starts in 30 minutes. You need to come with us, now. I looked at him like he'd grown a second head. You're joking. Do I look like I'm joking? We paid for your plate. You're going to show up, smile, and act like a normal member of this family. And you're going to apologize for that stunt you just pulled in there. I have to stay for the award announcement. You're not going to win, my mother said flatly. You embarrassed yourself with that emotional outburst. The other 2 candidates were professional, polished. You looked like a charity case begging for sympathy. There was that word again. Charity. I'm staying, I said firmly. My father's jaw clenched. If you don't come to your brother's party tonight, don't bother coming around anymore. We're done making excuses for you. We're done pretending your choices are acceptable. You want to be independent so badly? Fine, you're on your own. The ultimatum hung in the air like poison. Choose them. Choose the family that barely tolerated me, that measured my worth in dollar signs and social status. Choose the people who told me not to embarrass them at my own graduation. Or choose myself. I thought about the 17-year-old girls at the shelter who looked up to me. I thought about the single mothers I tutored who called me their hero. I thought about the families at the community garden who thanked me with tears in their eyes for helping them feed their children. I thought about the person I'd become despite my family, not because of them. Then I guess we're done, I said. My mother's eyes widened slightly, like she hadn't expected me to actually choose. Like she'd been bluffing, testing me, waiting for me to break and beg for their approval one more time. But I was done begging. You'll regret this, Derek said. When you're drowning in debt and can't find a real job, don't come crying to us. I won't, I promised. They turned and walked away. I watched them disappear down the hallway, watched my mother's designer purse swing with each angry step, watched my father's stiff shoulders that had never relaxed around me, watched Derek's swagger that came from never being told no. I waited for the pain to hit, for the crushing weight of losing my family to bring me to my knees, but instead I felt lighter. A woman approached me, one of the audience members who'd been watching the confrontation. She had kind eyes and gray hair pulled into a bun. Sweetie, are you okay? I wiped my eyes, surprised to find tears there despite my best efforts. I don't know. I think I just lost my family. From what I saw, she said gently, you didn't lose anything worth keeping. I wanted to believe her, but the hollow ache in my chest said otherwise. Come on, she said. Let's get you back inside. They're about to announce the winner. I followed her back into the auditorium. The lights were dimming again. People were returning to their seats. Marcus gave me a concerned look as I sat down. Vanessa didn't even glance up from her phone. Dean Richardson returned to the podium with an envelope in his hand. Ladies and gentlemen, our judges have reached a decision. This year's Hartman Memorial Excellence Award goes to a student who embodies not just academic achievement, but true courage and authenticity. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. The winner of the $50,000 Hartman Memorial Excellence Award is... He opened the envelope with agonizing slowness. The room held its collective breath, and then everything changed. Jessica Martinez! For a moment, I was sure I'd heard wrong. The name echoed through the speakers, bouncing off the walls, but my brain couldn't process it. Jessica Martinez, Dean Richardson repeated, smiling directly at me. Please come to the stage. The audience exploded into applause. People were standing, clapping, some even cheering. Marcus grabbed my arm and squeezed it, grinning. You did it, go! I stood on numb legs and walked to the stage in a daze. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. Girls like me, girls with empty graduation seats and families who called them charity cases, we didn't win. We didn't get $50,000 in validation in front of hundreds of people. But I was walking across that stage, and Dean Richardson was shaking my hand, and Judge Hartman himself was approaching with a trophy and an oversized check that had my name printed on it. Congratulations, Ms. Martinez, Judge Hartman said, his voice warm. My daughter would have loved you. I took the trophy with shaking hands. The check felt surreal, like a prop from a movie. $50,000. My student loans paid off 7 times over. Freedom, breathing room. A future that didn't involve drowning. Would you like to say a few words? Dean Richardson asked. I approached the microphone, my heart racing. I looked out at the sea of faces. Marcus's parents were crying again, this time for me, a stranger's daughter who'd won something their son hadn't. The woman with gray hair who'd comforted me in the hallway was wiping her eyes. And in the very back, the seats where my family had been sitting were empty. They'd left before the announcement. They'd walked out assuming I would lose, probably already at Derek's engagement party. Probably already explaining to guests why I wasn't there. Probably painting me as the ungrateful daughter who chose a meaningless award ceremony over family. I don't have a prepared speech for this, I began, my voice cracking. I honestly didn't think I'd win. Sympathetic laughter rippled through the crowd. A few minutes ago, my family gave me an ultimatum. They told me that if I stayed for this announcement instead of going to my brother's engagement party, I was on my own. That they were done making excuses for me. The audience went quiet, and I chose to stay. I chose myself. For the first time in my life, I chose me. Someone in the audience shouted, "Good for you." Others murmured agreement. This award means more to me than $50,000. It means that someone sees value in the work I do, that helping people matters, that I'm not worthless just because I don't measure success in profit margins. I looked directly at Judge Hartman. Thank you for creating something that honors your daughter's memory. Thank you for seeing me. And thank you for reminding me that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up when it matters most. The applause was deafening. People weren't just clapping politely anymore. They were on their feet, whistling, cheering like I'd just scored the winning goal in a championship game. I walked off stage, clutching my trophy and check, feeling like I was floating 6 inches above the ground. But the moment I stepped into the hallway, reality crashed back in. My phone was exploding with messages. 17 texts, 9 missed calls, all from my family. I opened the thread with trembling fingers. Derek, are you kidding me right now? You actually stayed? Mom, you missed your brother's engagement announcement for an award? Unbelievable. Dad, don't bother coming home for Thanksgiving. You've made your priorities clear. Derek, everyone here is asking where you are. You're making us look bad. Again. Mom, I hope you're happy. You've embarrassed this family for the last time. I stared at the messages, waiting for the guilt to sink in, waiting to feel like I'd made a terrible mistake. But all I felt was relief. Then a new message came through. Not from my family. From an unknown number. Hi, Jessica. This is Claire Hartman, Judge Hartman's granddaughter. My grandfather wanted me to reach out. He'd like to speak with you privately if you have a moment. He's in the faculty lounge on the second floor. My stomach clenched with nerves. Had I said something wrong in my speech? Was the award being revoked? I made my way to the second floor, still carrying my trophy like a security blanket. The faculty lounge was a cozy room with leather chairs and bookshelves lining the walls. Judge Hartman sat in one of the chairs, a photo album open on his lap. He looked up when I entered and smiled. Jessica, thank you for coming. Please sit. I sat across from him, clutching my trophy. Is everything okay? Everything is perfect, he assured me. I wanted to show you something. He turned the photo album toward me. The page showed a young woman, maybe 25, with bright eyes and a wide smile. She was wearing a graduation gown, standing in front of a youth center with a group of teenagers. This is my daughter, Caroline. She created this award before she passed away from cancer at 28. She was a social worker just like you're going to be. My throat tightened. She's beautiful. She was extraordinary. And she would have fought her own family to be in that room tonight watching you win. He paused. I overheard what your mother said to you in the hallway. Every word. I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment. I'm sorry you had to witness that. Don't you dare apologize for their behavior, he said firmly but kindly. You did nothing wrong. They did. He closed the album and leaned forward. Caroline had a similar family. Parents who wanted her to be a doctor or a lawyer, something prestigious. When she chose social work, they cut her off financially. Told her she was wasting her potential. What happened? She proved them wrong. She built a career helping people that mattered more than any corner office ever could. And when she got sick, do you know who showed up? Not her parents. The families she'd helped. The kids she'd mentored. The community she'd served. Her funeral had over 500 people. Tears slipped down my cheeks. I couldn't stop them. Her parents came to the funeral, he continued quietly. And they cried. Not because they'd lost her, but because they'd wasted every opportunity to know her. And now it was too late. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. This is for you. I run a foundation that funds social programs. We're always looking for passionate people to lead new initiatives. When you graduate and you're ready, call me. The starting salary is $70,000 a year. I stared at the card like it might disappear. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. Say you'll stop letting people who don't see your value determine your worth. He stood, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. You're going to do remarkable things, Jessica, with or without their approval. After he left, I sat alone in that quiet room, holding a trophy, a check, and a business card that represented a future I'd never dared to imagine. My phone buzzed again. Another text from my mother. You're dead to us. I turned off my phone and smiled through my tears. Because for the first time in my life, I was finally alive. I drove home that night with the trophy buckled into my passenger seat like a fragile friend. The check sat in my purse, folded carefully, though I'd looked at it 17 times to make sure it was real. Judge Hartman's business card was tucked into my wallet, pressed against my driver's license like a talisman. My apartment was dark and quiet when I arrived. My roommate Sarah was visiting her family for the weekend, so I had the place to myself. I set the trophy on our tiny kitchen table and just stared at it under the dim overhead light. Jessica Martinez, Hartman Memorial Excellence Award, $50,000. I should have been celebrating. Calling friends. Posting pictures. Screaming with joy. Instead, I cried. Not sad tears. Not exactly. They were complicated tears, the kind that come when relief and grief tangle together and you can't separate them. I'd won something extraordinary, but I'd lost my family in the process. Or maybe I'd never really had them to begin with. I finally turned my phone back on around midnight. The messages had multiplied like a virus. Derek. Mom's having a breakdown because of you. Hope you're proud. Dad. You chose money over family. That tells us everything we need to know about who you really are. Mom. Don't expect any help from us when that award money runs out and you're struggling. You made your bed. There were also messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Probably relatives who'd heard the family gossip, probably calling to tell me what a disappointment I was. But there was one message that made me pause. From my grandmother, my father's mother, who I hadn't spoken to in months. "Mija, your cousin Rosa told me what happened tonight. Call me when you can. I'm proud of you. Always have been." I stared at those words until they blurred. My grandmother had always been different from the rest of them. Softer, kinder. But she'd been outvoted by my parents' influence for years, kept at a distance because she encouraged my unrealistic dreams. I called her. She answered on the first ring. "Jessica?" "Abuela," I whispered, and just hearing her voice made me cry again. "Oh, mi amor, tell me everything." So I did. I told her about graduation, about the empty seats, about the award, about the confrontation in the hallway, about Judge Hartman and his daughter Caroline, about the ultimatum and the terrible choice I'd had to make. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Do you know why your mother is the way she is?" she finally asked. "Because she values money more than people?" "Because she's terrified of being ordinary," my grandmother said. "Your mother grew up poor, Jessica. Really poor. And she spent her entire life clawing her way out of that. Marrying your father. Building this image of success. She sees your choices as a rejection of everything she fought for. That doesn't make it okay." "No, it doesn't. I'm not excusing her. I'm explaining her. There's a difference." She paused. "But you, Mija, you're not afraid to be ordinary. You're not afraid to care more about people than appearances. And that terrifies her because she can't understand it. She told me I was dead to her. She says things she doesn't mean when she's angry. Give her time. Abuela, she didn't come to my graduation. She called my degree worthless. She gave me an ultimatum between her and my future. How much time does she need?" My grandmother sighed. "Maybe more than she has. Maybe forever. I don't know, Jessica, but I know this. You did the right thing tonight. You chose yourself. And that's not selfish. That's survival." We talked for another hour. She told me stories about my mother's childhood that I'd never heard, painting a picture of a woman so desperate to escape poverty that she'd sacrificed softness for steel. It helped me understand, but it didn't heal the wound. When we finally hung up, I felt exhausted but slightly less alone. The next morning, I woke up to a knock on my door. I stumbled out of bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes, and opened it to find Marcus Chen standing there with coffee and bagels. "How did you know where I live?" "Student directory. Hope that's not creepy." He held up the bag. "I figured you could use some company. And carbs. Winners always need carbs." I let him in, grateful for the distraction. We sat at my tiny kitchen table, the trophy between us like a third person. "So," he said, biting into a bagel. That speech was insane. In the best way possible. I wasn't planning it. I just snapped. "Well, your snap won you 50 grand and made Vanessa Torres throw her phone across the parking lot, so I'd call it a successful snap." I laughed despite everything. "She threw her phone?" "Oh yeah, full tantrum. She was so sure she had it locked down with her tech nonprofit and corporate partnerships. She did not handle losing well." "And you? How are you handling it?" Marcus shrugged. "Honestly, I'm okay. My parents are proud of me regardless. That's the difference, isn't it? Support that isn't conditional on winning." His words hit harder than he probably intended. "I saw your family leave before they announced the winner," he said quietly. "That's messed up, Jessica. They gave me an ultimatum. Them or the ceremony. And you chose the ceremony. I chose me." He raised his coffee cup. "To choosing yourself. Scariest and bravest thing a person can do." We clinked cups, and I felt a little bit of the weight lift. Later that afternoon, I went to the youth shelter for my regular volunteer shift. I hadn't told anyone there about the award yet, but the moment I walked in, Alicia ran up to me with her phone. "Miss Jessica, you're famous." "What?" She showed me her screen. Someone had recorded my speech and posted it on social media. It had over 200,000 views. The comments were flooded with support. "Your speech made me cry," This girl is going to change the world. Family isn't always blood. She chose herself and won. I felt dizzy. I'd expected the speech to stay in that auditorium, witnessed by a few hundred people and then forgotten. I hadn't expected it to become public. I hadn't expected thousands of strangers to hear my story. My phone started buzzing. Friend requests. Messages from people I'd never met. News outlets asking for interviews. And then, buried in the notifications, I saw it. A message from Derek. You need to take that video down. Now. You're making the family look terrible. Mom's friends have seen it. Dad's business partners are asking questions. This has gone too far. I read it 3 times. Then I typed back, no. His response was immediate. Are you serious? You're really going to humiliate us publicly like this? I told the truth. If the truth humiliates you, that's not my problem. You're going to regret this. I blocked his number. Then I blocked my parents' numbers too. Because I was done explaining myself. Done defending my choices. Done begging for crumbs of approval from people who would never see me as enough. Alicia tugged on my sleeve. Miss Jessica? Are you okay? I looked down at this 17-year-old girl who'd been abandoned by her own family, who was fighting every day just to survive, who looked at me like I was a hero. Yeah, I said, meaning it. I'm okay. But even as I said it, I knew the real battle was just beginning. The video went viral over the weekend. By Monday morning, it had 3 million views. News outlets were calling it the graduation speech that exposed toxic family dynamics, and a rallying cry for young people choosing passion over profit. I became an accidental spokesperson for something I'd never intended to represent. My email inbox was flooded. Interview requests from podcasts, morning shows, online magazines, messages from other young people sharing their own stories of family rejection and conditional love. Dozens of people telling me I'd given them courage to choose themselves too. But there were also the other messages. The angry ones. You aired your family's dirty laundry for attention. Disgusting. Ungrateful brat. Your parents paid to raise you and this is how you repay them? You're going to regret burning those bridges when you need them. I tried to ignore the negative comments, but they burrowed under my skin like splinters. Maybe they were right. Maybe I'd gone too far. Maybe I should have kept my mouth shut and played along. On Tuesday, I received an email that made my blood run cold. The sender was my father's attorney. Dear Ms. Martinez, I represent Richard and Patricia Martinez in a matter concerning defamatory statements made during a public event on April 28th. Your recorded speech has caused significant reputational damage to my clients and their business interests. We demand you remove all videos containing these statements and issue a public apology or face legal action for defamation and emotional distress. You have 48 hours to comply. My hand shook as I read it. They were threatening to sue me for telling the truth, for speaking about my own life, my own experiences, my own pain. I forwarded the email to Judge Hartman, my fingers barely able to type. Within an hour, he called me. Jessica, don't respond to this. Don't do anything. I'm having my attorney contact you. This is an intimidation tactic, nothing more. But what if they actually sue me? I can't afford— They won't, trust me. This is your father trying to scare you into silence. It won't work. But I was scared. Terrified, actually. Because even if they didn't sue, they'd shown me exactly how far they'd go to protect their image. They'd rather destroy me legally than admit they'd failed me emotionally. That afternoon, I met with Judge Hartman's attorney, a sharp woman named Rebecca Chen, who looked at the threatening letter and laughed. This is the weakest intimidation attempt I've seen in years, she said. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. You told your story. You didn't lie about them. They can't sue you for being honest. So I don't have to apologize? God, no. Don't apologize for anything. In fact, if they push this, we could counter-sue for harassment. She leaned back in her chair. Jessica, powerful people hate when their victims find their voice. Your parents are panicking because they can't control the narrative anymore. That's their problem, not yours. I left her office feeling slightly less terrified but still shaken. My phone rang as I walked to my car. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Jessica Martinez? Yes? This is Principal David Morrison from Westfield High School. I watched your speech online and I have a proposition for you. I stopped walking. I'm listening. We're starting a new program for at-risk youth, students aging out of foster care or dealing with family instability. We need someone to run it. Someone who understands what they're going through. Someone like you. I haven't graduated yet. I don't have my degree. You graduate in 2 weeks. The job starts in August. $45,000 a year plus benefits. And you'd be working directly with students who need exactly what you needed at their age. Someone who sees them. I stood in the parking lot, stunned. Are you serious? Completely. Email me your resume. Let's set up an official interview. But between you and me, the job's yours if you want it. I hung up and screamed. Actually screamed in the middle of a parking lot, startling an elderly couple walking by. A real job, with benefits, doing exactly what I loved, because someone had seen my speech and thought I was qualified, not despite my struggles, but because of them. I called my grandmother immediately. Abuela, you won't believe what just happened. I told her about the job offer, about the attorney, about everything spiraling in directions I couldn't control. She listened, and then she said something that changed everything. Your mother called me yesterday. I went very still. What did she say? She wanted me to convince you to take down the video. She said you were destroying the family's reputation, that your father might lose business deals, that Derek's fiance's family is reconsidering the engagement because of the scandal. My stomach dropped. And what did you tell her? I told her that maybe if she'd been a better mother, her daughter wouldn't have had such a painful story to tell. I actually gasped out loud. You said that? I did, and then I told her that I was proud of you, that you'd accomplished something remarkable despite getting no support from them, and that if she wanted to repair this relationship, she needed to start with an apology, not a lawyer. What did she say? She hung up on me. We haven't spoken since. My grandmother's voice softened. I'm sorry, mija. I know you hoped they'd come around. I don't hope for that anymore, I said quietly. I can't keep waiting for people who will never show up. That night, I received a message request on social media from someone named Amanda Price. Her profile picture showed a woman in her 30s with kind eyes. Hi, Jessica. You don't know me, but I'm Caroline Hartman's best friend. Judge Hartman told me about you. I run a nonprofit that supports young women transitioning out of foster care, and I'd love to talk to you about getting involved. Caroline would have adored you. I accepted the request and we messaged for an hour. She told me stories about Caroline, about her passion for helping others, about how she'd faced similar family rejection and used it as fuel to build something meaningful. She always said that the people who wound us deepest teach us the most important lessons, Amanda wrote. Not because they mean to, but because surviving them makes us stronger. What was the most important lesson she learned? I asked. That you can't make people love you the way you need to be loved, but you can find people who already do. I read those words over and over until they sank into my bones. On Wednesday, exactly 48 hours after the attorney's ultimatum, I posted a response video, not taking down my speech, not apologizing, but speaking directly to everyone who'd shared their own stories with me. I've received thousands of messages from people who feel unseen by their own families. People who've been told their dreams don't matter, their choices are wrong, their worth is conditional. And I want you to know, you're not alone. You're not crazy. You're not ungrateful for wanting to be valued for who you are, not who they want you to be. I paused, looking directly into the camera. Some people say I should have kept quiet, that I shouldn't have embarrassed my family publicly. But here's what I know. Silence protects abusers. Silence protects people who make you feel small. And I'm done being small to make others comfortable. The video got 2 million views in 6 hours. My father's attorney never contacted me again. And 3 days later, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. Jessica, this is your Aunt Linda, your mother's sister. Can we meet? There's something you need to know about your mother. Something that might help you understand. Please. I stared at the message for a long time, Part of me wanted to ignore it, to keep moving forward without looking back. But another part of me, the part that still ached for answers, needed to know. I typed back, when and where. We met at a quiet coffee shop on Thursday afternoon. Aunt Linda was a softer version of my mother, with the same sharp features but gentler eyes. I hadn't seen her in almost 5 years. My mother had cut her off after some family argument I was never told about. She hugged me when I arrived, holding on longer than expected. "Look at you," she said, pulling back to study my face. "You look so much like your mother did at your age, before everything hardened her." We sat in a corner booth, away from other customers. She ordered us both coffee, and then she took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something about your mother that she'd kill me for sharing. But after watching your speech, after seeing what she's putting you through, I can't stay silent anymore." My heart pounded. "Okay. Your mother had a daughter before you, before Derek. She was 17, unmarried, and terrified." The world tilted sideways. "What?" She gave the baby up for adoption. "A little girl. Your mother's parents forced her to, told her she'd ruin her life if she kept the baby, that no decent man would ever marry her with a child." Aunt Linda's eyes filled with tears. It destroyed something in her. She spent years trying to prove she was worth something despite that choice. I couldn't breathe. My mother had another daughter. I had a sister somewhere in the world. She met your father when she was 22. He came from money, had prospects, represented everything her parents said she needed. She married him and had Derek 2 years later, then you 3 years after that. But she never stopped trying to prove she'd made the right choice by giving up that first baby. How does that explain treating me like I'm worthless? Aunt Linda reached across the table and took my hand. "Because you remind her of who she used to be. A girl with dreams that didn't fit into other people's plans. A girl who cared more about people than status. She sees herself in you, Jessica, and it terrifies her. Because if your way is valid, if choosing passion over profit is okay, then maybe she made the wrong choice 30 years ago." I felt tears sliding down my cheeks. "That's not fair. I'm not responsible for her regrets." "No, you're not. But trauma makes people cruel in ways they don't even understand. Your mother looks at you and sees every road she didn't take, every dream she killed to become acceptable. And instead of being proud that you're brave enough to choose differently, she resents you for it." "Does Derek know?" "No. Your father knows, but they never told the kids. Your mother buried it so deep she almost convinced herself it never happened." Aunt Linda squeezed my hand. "I'm not telling you this to make you forgive her. I'm telling you so you understand that her rejection isn't about you. It never was. It's about her own unhealed wounds." We sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of this revelation settle between us. "Why are you telling me this now?" I finally asked. "Because I saw your speech. I saw a young woman choosing herself despite the cost, and I thought about that baby your mother gave away. I thought about how different things might have been if she'd had the courage you have." Aunt Linda wiped her eyes, and I realized that silence has protected your mother's shame for too long. Maybe the truth will set someone free. Maybe you. Maybe her. I don't know. Have you tried to find her? My half-sister? I tried once, about 10 years ago. The adoption was closed. I hit dead ends everywhere. But she's out there somewhere. She'd be 33 now. I felt the strangeness of having a sister I'd never met. A piece of my history that had been hidden from me. Another way my family had controlled the narrative, kept secrets, maintained their perfect image. Does my mother know you're telling me this? God, no. She'll probably never speak to me again when she finds out. But honestly, Jessica, I've been silent for her comfort for decades. I'm done with that. After Aunt Linda left, I sat in that coffee shop for another hour, trying to process everything. My phone buzzed with a message from Rebecca Chen, Judge Hartman's attorney. Your parents' lawyer officially withdrew the threat. You're clear. They're backing down. Relief flooded through me, but it was complicated by everything I now knew. My mother wasn't just a cold, status-obsessed woman. She was a wounded girl who'd never healed, who'd spent 30 years trying to outrun a choice she'd been forced to make. It didn't excuse her behavior, but it explained it. That evening, I drove to my grandmother's house. She opened the door, took one look at my face and pulled me inside. What happened? I told her everything Aunt Linda had shared. My grandmother's face went pale, then sad, then something like understanding. I knew, she whispered. I was there when it happened. I tried to convince your mother's parents to let her keep the baby, but they wouldn't listen. They were so ashamed, so worried about what people would think. She sat down heavily. I've watched your mother run from that pain her entire life. I've watched her build walls so high no one could reach her, including her own children. Did you know she'd treat me the same way her parents treated her? My grandmother looked at me with ancient sadness. I hoped she wouldn't. I prayed she'd break the cycle. But pain like that, when it's not healed, it gets passed down like a disease. I spent the night at my grandmother's house, sleeping in her guest room like I had as a child. In the morning, I woke up to find her making breakfast and humming softly. I've been thinking, she said as she set down a plate of eggs. You should write to your mother, not to forgive her, not to reconcile, but to say what you need to say, to close the loop for yourself. She won't read it. Maybe not, but you'll have written it. And sometimes that's enough. I spent the next 2 days writing a letter I would never send. Pages and pages of everything I'd never been allowed to say. About feeling invisible. About working myself to exhaustion for scraps of approval. About the empty graduation seats and the $7,000 in debt and the way they'd turned my accomplishments into embarrassments. But I also wrote about understanding. About how hurt people. About how I hoped she'd find peace with the choice she'd made 30 years ago. About how I forgave her, not because she deserved it, but because I deserved to be free of the anger. I ended with this. I'm not the daughter you wanted, but I'm exactly the person I need to be, and maybe someday you'll see that as enough. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. Maybe I'd send it someday. Maybe I wouldn't. But writing it had cracked something open inside me, let light into places that had been dark for too long. On Saturday, 1 week after the award ceremony, I received an email that changed everything again. The subject line read, I think I'm your sister. My hands trembled so violently I almost dropped my phone. The email was short, just 3 paragraphs, but each word felt like a bomb detonating in my chest. My name is Sarah Brennan. I'm 33 years old, adopted at birth through a closed adoption in this state. I've been searching for my birth family for years with no luck. Then 3 days ago, someone sent me your viral speech. The woman in the audience you briefly showed looked exactly like photos I have from my adoption file. I did some research and found your mother's maiden name. It matches. I think Patricia Martinez is my birth mother, which means you're my sister. Please, if you're willing, I'd like to talk. I read it 17 times. My half-sister had found me. Not through years of searching records or hiring investigators. Through a viral video I'd made in a moment of raw honesty. The universe had taken my pain and turned it into a bridge. I replied immediately, Yes, let's talk. When can we meet? We arranged to meet the next day at the same coffee shop where I'd met Aunt Linda. I barely slept that night, my mind spinning with questions. What did she look like? Did she have our mother's eyes? Had she had a good life? Did she hate our mother for giving her up, or had she found peace with it? Sunday afternoon arrived with painful slowness. I got to the coffee shop 30 minutes early, too nervous to wait at home. I ordered tea I didn't drink and watched the door like my life depended on it. When Sarah walked in, I knew her instantly. She had my mother's bone structure, my grandmother's smile, and something uniquely her own. She was beautiful in a way that made my chest ache. We locked eyes across the room, and I saw my own nervousness reflected back at me. We stood at the same moment and met in the middle of the cafe. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Hi, she whispered. Hi, I whispered back. Then we were hugging, 2 strangers who shared blood, who'd been separated by secrets and shame, finally finding each other in the ruins of a family that had tried to bury the truth. We sat and talked for 4 hours straight. She told me about her adoptive parents, kind people who'd given her a stable, loving childhood. She told me about always feeling like something was missing, a piece of her identity she couldn't access. She told me about the search that had consumed her 20s, the dead ends, the frustration, the grief of not knowing where she came from. "And then I saw your speech," she said, tears in her eyes. And I saw her in the background and something just clicked. I knew. I can't explain it, but I knew. "What do you want from this?" I asked carefully. "From finding us? Honestly, I just want to know my story. I want to understand where I came from. I don't need a relationship with her if she doesn't want one. I don't need anything except answers." I told her everything. About our mother's coldness, about the family dynamics, about Derek and my father and the impossible standards. I told her about Aunt Linda's revelation, about the choice our mother had been forced to make. "She gave me up to avoid shame," Sarah said quietly. "And then she spent her whole life trying to outrun that shame by being perfect. By having the perfect family, the perfect image. Except I ruined that image by being imperfect." "No." Sarah reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "You saved yourself by being real. That's not the same thing. We talked about what to do next. Whether to contact our mother, whether to tell Derek, whether to let sleeping dogs lie or blow the family secrets wide open. I think," Sarah said slowly, "that I need to meet her. Not for her, for me. I need to look her in the eye and know that I existed, that I was real, that giving me up cost her something. She'll deny it. She'll shut down. She might even refuse to see you. Then at least I'll know I tried." We exchanged numbers, promising to stay in touch regardless of what happened next. As Sarah stood to leave, she hugged me again. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being brave enough to tell your truth. You gave me back a piece of myself I didn't know was missing." After she left, I sat in that coffee shop and cried. Not sad tears, grateful tears, overwhelmed tears, because somehow in the wreckage of losing my family, I'd found a sister. That night I did something I swore I'd never do. I unblocked my mother's number and sent her a single text. "I met Sarah today. She's wonderful. You should meet her too." I didn't expect a response. I didn't need one. But 3 hours later, my phone rang. My mother's name flashed on the screen. I answered. "Jessica." Her voice was small, broken, nothing like the sharp authority I was used to. "How did you find out about her?" "Aunt Linda told me. And then Sarah found me through the video." Silence. Long, heavy silence. "I can't do this," she finally said, and I heard something I'd never heard before in my mother's voice. Fear. "I can't face her. I can't face what I did." "You don't have to do it for her," I said quietly. "You have to do it for yourself. Because running from this is what's been making you cruel. Running from this is what made you push me away. And I think you know that." More silence. "Then, I was 17. I didn't have a choice." "I know. And I'm not asking you to apologize for that choice. I'm asking you to stop punishing me for reminding you of it." I heard her breath catch, heard something that might have been a sob. "She wants to meet you," I continued. "Just to talk. To understand. She doesn't want anything from you except to know her story. What if I can't give her that? What if seeing her breaks me? Then you'll be broken. And maybe that's what needs to happen for you to finally heal." We didn't resolve anything on that call. She didn't apologize for my graduation, or the ultimatum, or the years of emotional distance. But something had shifted. A crack in the armor, a possibility of something different. 2 weeks later, my mother agreed to meet Sarah. I wasn't there for it, but Sarah called me afterward, her voice shaking. "She cried," Sarah said. "I've never seen someone cry like that. Like 30 years of grief were pouring out all at once." "Did she apologize?" "Eventually. She told me about her parents, about the shame, about how she thought she was doing the right thing. And then she asked if I'd had a good life, if my parents loved me. When I said yes, she cried even harder. That's good, right?" "Yeah, it's good. It's a start." Sarah paused. "She asked about you. Asked if you were okay. Asked if she'd ruined everything with you." My throat tightened. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that you're the strongest person I've ever met, and that if she wants a relationship with you, she needs to earn it, not demand it." I graduated 2 weeks later. My mother didn't come to the ceremony. But my grandmother did, and Aunt Linda, And Sarah, my sister, who I'd known for less than a month but who felt like she'd always been part of me. Judge Hartman came too, sitting in the front row, beaming with pride. After the ceremony, we all went to dinner. A family I'd built from the rubble of the one I was born into. A family that chose me, that celebrated me, that saw my worth without conditions. As we raised our glasses to toast, Sarah leaned over and whispered, "This is what she missed out on. And that's her loss, not yours." 6 months later, I started my job at Westfield High School, running the program for at-risk youth. I used part of my award money to pay off my student loans. I used another part to fund scholarships for kids aging out of foster care. The rest I saved for a future I was finally excited about. My mother and I talk now, carefully, slowly, building something fragile and new from the ashes of what was broken. She's trying. It's not perfect. It's not healed. But it's honest. Derek still doesn't speak to me. My father sends occasional texts that are polite but distant. I've accepted that some relationships can't be salvaged. But I have Sarah. I have my grandmother. I have Judge Hartman's foundation, and the students I mentor, and the community I'm building. I have myself. The parts of me that are strong because I had to be, gentle because I chose to be, and brave because staying silent would have killed me. The video of my speech still circulates sometimes. People still message me, sharing their own stories of choosing themselves over toxic family expectations. And every time, I respond with the same message. You're not selfish for wanting to be seen. You're not ungrateful for choosing your truth. And you're not alone. Because I'm not alone anymore either. And neither are they.